We the people have been lied to. The system as we know it and that we call fair is not fair. It is distorted. It is manipulated. It is deceptive. It is set up for a selfish gain. It is a system that shortchanges the voter. When you're running for an election, there should be no need for anybody to fill out petitions to be on the ballot. In other areas, in other states, these things are not done. But in the state of Illinois, they are done. And then you have to ask yourself the question, why? The question mainly is for control. To control the narrative and the outcome of elections, and to use your resources and assert your authority to get people to do the things that you want to do. We look at the Board of Election as being a legal entity, a fair entity. But as I said in the last video, and I'll continue to say, it is not. Clearly, if anyone would look at the Board of Elections, you would see when you challenge anybody on anything, you need to file what's called a FOIA. When you go into the Board of Elections, you sign your name, and it lets people know that you actually did the work in checking what you're accusing somebody of. So when they accuse Frederick Collins of signatures being fraudulent, in the examination, they never looked at signatures, they looked at addresses. But they had already set the tone through Rodney Stewart, the hearing officer, through Andre Holland, the challenger who continues to challenge, and through the Board of Elections. This is misuse of power, totally misuse of power, and it has been allowed to be misused. When you don't allow the person who's being told they are guilty of something to defend themselves, that is a violation of their constitutional right, we the people. It also violates the voters' rights of freedom of choice. Chicago will never be what it needs to be because of the crookedness that goes on. And at the same time, talking out both sides of the elected officials' mouths, making it seem like they give a damn about the constituents and the people of the city. If they did, crime would not be at an all-time high. Our public school system would be very compatible with other states. Our south and west sides would be up to par. We would not have as many liquor stores in our communities. We would have more viable stores that made a difference. But we see and we continue to see the misuse of our elected officials' authority. Everything has selfish gain. So now, today, it will be known that Frederick Collins has been put off the ballot. Not because he didn't do things right, not because he didn't do things the proper way, but because those behind the scenes, your Brandon Johnsons, your Tony Prepwinkle, who feared him winning the seat, used every trick in the book to get him kicked off the ballot. And I said when the process was going through, the Board of Elections is going to do what's right. The Board of Election is going to be fair. But we found that the Board of Election is just as crooked as anybody else. So then, like I said in the last video, do you believe that we need a Board of Elections? Because from where I'm sitting, I don't think so. They're not serving any purpose. Because if you look on their site, no FOIA should have been thrown out. The challenge should have been denied, and Collins should have been presented on the ballot. No Rule 8, no good faith hearing, did not listen to any evidence. And as I said, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to show you documents that actually shows how the petitions were actually filled out. I'm going to send you emails that was sent that Rodney Stewart manipulated the system and drug out the time and wind down the clock. I'm going to send you the appearance and the motions that was sent from Collins' attorney so you all can understand for yourself. This thing is serious. And if we as black people are going to get where we need to be at the time we need to be there, we need to now stand up to the plate and make a difference. We need to now pull the covers, pull the shades, open the door, and bust open the windows and show people what's truly going on. So now we have candidates that's running. You have Paul Valens, and you need to check into Paul Valens. He's not the person for the city of Chicago. He has lawsuits for children being misused and violated that was not addressed. He was also in the situation of the Barbara Byrd Bennett when she got kicked out of school for the misappropriation of funds. So you have your Cam Buckner, who's a state's representative who has two DUIs. Now, I'm not saying that people can't change their life. They can. But here is my thing. Why would you put people in office who sit in office and have not done what they needed to do from the get-go? Why? And why did they feel that Frederick Collins was such a threat? Why? Because in other states, in other areas, 9 times out of 10, most of the police officers they ran for office, they took it over. But my point being that this process was not fair. It was rigged from day one. For the hearing officer to have a sidebar conversation with the challenger attorney is a conflict of interest. That means that you all had already decided that you were going to do whatever needed to be done to keep Frederick Collins off the ballot. Is it fair? Of course not. But when we learn and understand that we are the employer and your elected officials are the employees, we will be able to make a big difference. But until we learn that fact, we will never get to where we need to be. And I'm going to continue posting videos until somebody acknowledge the wrong that was done to Frederick Collins. Am I pissed off? Of course. Am I mad? Of course. Am I angry? Of course. Because you know what? It happens to nobody but us. And some of us do it to us, thinking we're being 10 cents slick and thinking we are justified in the wrong. How can you have rules and regulations that you don't follow yourself at all? How can you expect somebody else to be accountable to the law when our elected officials are not accountable to the law? So for me, when you do things like that, you deserve to be locked up too like anybody else. You are not excluded and you are not the exception to the rule. The attorney, Frank Lasker, or whatever your name is, you are just as guilty. Every Chicago Board of Election member is just as guilty. When you are able to present your findings the day of the hearing on Friday before the hearing even started, and when you disregard the constitutional right of Frederick Collins to run as a candidate, when you take your records and disregard your rules, that lets me know there's a problem. It's not a new problem. This is an ongoing problem that's been happening from day one. We're just being privy to the trickery that takes place when you're running for office. Check out your petitions. They're not for to gain signatures, they're for nominations. It's like when people in the entertainment industry, you get so many nominations and whoever gets the most nominations win the trophy. But this is not how the system is set up here. They use the nominations of people's voices to exclude you from the candidacy. Now, Over 700 affidavits were signed. That should account for something, but clearly it did not. And most of the signatures that were signed came from police officers. So in a sense, you're saying that those police officers are not viable people to consider. In the database, in checking the address, which clearly in the transcript it says signatures only, but people do what they want to do when they want to do how they want to do it, so they decide to check addresses. Frederick Collins' name came up and his address came up invalid. Another young lady came up, her address came invalid, and she's a homeowner. So just think, the Board of Elections database is out of date. We was in COVID environment for 3 years. When did they truly have time to update their system? When? And so if that's outdated, then don't you think everything else is outdated? When you go into a court of law, everybody is afforded the opportunity to present their side. Evidence is turned in. Testimonies are given. So why was not evidence allowed to be submitted, and why were testimonies ignored? Because they had already made their decision what they was going to do before we got to Friday's date. And they ran to do it quickly before Monday so they can adequately say that he was not going to be on the ballot. There's an email from the attorney, Fine, that says, you granted us that he would not be on the ballot, but it's not in the transcript, nowhere to be found. These are the stories that need to be addressed. This is the awareness that needs to be created, and these are the things that need to be stopped. For me, as a registered voter, nobody that's running for office deserves to sit in that seat. And they really do not have your best interests at heart, neither do they care about crime. Now, as far as the FOP, John Joe Credenza went on and supported Paul Valance. So what does that say for the FOP? When you support somebody who did things wrong for the public school system and allowed kids to be misused and abused, don't speak volume for that. Check Jamal Green's record. He got a record long as your fingers to your elbows. Willie Wilson is not a person that needs to be married at all. He's not caring about the people. He caring about free meals and giving out gas. Nobody had a platform like Frederick Collins had a platform. And for me, this is truly a slap in the face. Totally a slap in the face. And it's totally unfair. Documentation that was supposed to have been said in motions and appearances was from Johnny Lagabo. And they took the same motion, copied it over, and put Frederick Collins on it and presented it. How does that make it fair? If we would do something like that, that would mean tampering with evidence and legal documentation, correct? So why did the hearing officer, Rodney Stewart, why was he allowed to do that? Why did the Board of Election not honor their good faith hearing, their Rule 8? Why didn't they honor that? Why in the Rule 20 hearing they didn't allow evidence to be presented to actually make a fair decision? You know why? Because they were paid not to care. They were paid to ignore what was right, and they chose to do what's wrong. Now, I don't know how y'all sleep at night setting people up. I don't know where your heart is at. I don't. And when you do something like that, it does not make you a great candidate to be nothing. It makes you a complete asshole. From the Board of Election all the way down to Rodney Stewart. That's what it makes you. And this city, this state should be ashamed of itself, denying Frederick Collins his constitutional right, denying the voters their freedom of choice of who they want to put in the office or not. And although Frederick Collins will not be a write-in, I challenge you to go to the polls and write him in anyway. And let's show them you cannot tell me what I can do with my vote. I choose what I can do with my vote. You cannot set the table for me and place the meal that you want to force me to eat. I choose to do that myself. Do that for me. Reality is where words come to life. And I'm going to keep posting, and I'm going to keep video, and I'm going to keep posting until somebody steps up to the plate and say this needs to stop. From the governor to the head over the Board of Election, because it's a bad look for you. So no longer can we trust what you say or what you do. And I'm going to do everything in my power to expose every hand that touched the sabotage and the railroading of Frederick Collins, because I saw it with my own eyes, sat in the midst of it, and watched it unfold. Till we talk again.